Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second day of eCOTS 2020. I'm so glad to see everyone back today. This is a particularly exciting session to me because this is a session where we are going to be announcing the winner of the DollarStreet competition that was announced on CosWeb. So today, the first presenters are going to be the first place winners. So I am pleased to announce that Stacey, Hancock, and Jade Schmidt were the first place winners of the DollarStreet competition. Stacey Hancock is an assistant professor of statistics in the Department of Mathematical Statistics at Montana State University, where she is also faculty course supervisor of the Introduction to Statistics coordinated course. She earned her master's degree in statistics at Montana State and her PhD from Colorado State University. An active member of the statistics education research community, her primary research interests are in statistics and data science education, with secondary interest in time series and environmental statistics. Prior to her appointment at MSU, she helped develop and implement the BS Data Science degree at the University of California, Irvine. Jane Smith is an assistant teaching professor in the Department of Mathematical Sciences at Montana State University. She earned her master's degree in statistics at Montana State in 2012. For the past 7 years, Jade has served as the Student Success Coordinator of the Introduction to Statistics coordinated course. She helped to overhaul the Introduction to Statistics coordinated course to focus on simulated-based curriculum using a technology-enhanced active learning pedagogy. I am pleased to now turn it over to Stacey and Jade to talk about their DollarStreet activity.
Thanks, Megan. Let me start sharing. Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending. My name is Stacey Hancock and I'm here with Jade Schmidt, as Megan introduced. And thanks, Megan, for hosting this session. We're excited to show you what we've come up with. So today we're going to be talking about the DollarStreet assignment that we entered into the contest. I'll first start talking about introductory statistics at Montana State and what it looks like, and then a motivation for multivariable data visualization in the intro course. Then we'll give a short tour of DollarStreet and our assignment, and then Jade will take us through the assignment and example student submissions and some lessons learned at the end. So here's our university in Montana, the beautiful Bridger Mountains in the background, not too bad of a place to live. Some facts about our university: we're the one land-grant university in Montana. Our enrollment's about 16,000 students, with about half of them from Montana. In our Department of Mathematical Sciences, we offer an Introduction to Statistics course that's a coordinated course across many sections. So we cover descriptive statistics, sampling, and scope of inference, and then go into statistical inference for 1 and 2 samples, as well as regression. This is the largest course on campus with an annual enrollment of about 1,500 students, which turns out to be about 10% of the undergraduates at MSU takes this course. And each semester we have about 10 to 25 sections where there's 40 to 60 students in each section. Most of these sections are taught by statistics master's and PhD students, as well as non-tenure track faculty. And it's a 3-credit course for 15 weeks. In the classroom, we use a simulation-based curriculum. In particular, we use Introduction to Statistical Investigations by Tintel et al. And it's an entirely flipped class. So students will read parts of the book and watch some videos outside of class, take a short online quiz. And then within class, we do the what are called explorations in the textbook, which are the in-class activities. And that's a picture of one of our classrooms at the bottom there. For technology, we use ISI web applets, and we also started using Tableau for data visualization a couple years ago. So we thought we would get a little bit of audience input. And we're curious, for data visualization, which of the following technology tools do you use in the IntroStat classroom? Great, okay. That's great, interesting. So we have a few people using CODAP and web applets. Excel seems to be the most popular one. No people using Tableau, that's interesting. But the others at the question and answer session would be curious as to what sorts of experiences you have with data visualization and technology. So why did we choose Tableau? For multivariable thinking, so we're probably all familiar with the guidelines for assessment and instruction in statistics education, the revised report that came out in 2016. And one of the new guidelines was under recommendation 1, Teach Statistical Thinking, which talks about multivariable thinking. And I really like this quote from the report that says, "We must prepare our students to answer challenging questions that require them to investigate and explore relationships among many variables." So too often the intro stat course just focuses on 1 or 2 variables, and we really want to get students thinking about multiple variables early in the semester. So this is a picture of one of the plots that we asked students to do in our DollarStreet activity that Jade will talk about in a minute. And this is the screen of what Tableau looks like. A couple of reasons we like it. Students can drag and drop variables over to different axes or colors or sizes. And in this particular plot, there's actually 4 variables going on. So there's a log of income per person. These observational units are countries. There's life expectancy on the y-axis. And then we have 2 different colors for the years. And then the size of the dots are population. And so some interesting things can be learned about the relationship between these 4 variables just by looking at this plot. So before we give a tour of DollarStreet, we're just going to ask how familiar you are with DollarStreet. So another poll should pop up here in a second. Okay, great. So most of us have not even heard of DollarStreet, so this is exciting to show you what this new tool is. A couple people have used it in the assignment. It would be interesting to hear about what others are doing as well. So I'm just going to go to the website of DollarStreet and show you a little bit around. So the idea is this street at the top called DollarStreet, and the axis goes from the poorest to the richest households in the world. And so what each observational unit is one of these households, and you can click on one of these pictures, and it would show you, say, what's their annual income, who they are. They take about, people go to their home and take about 125 pictures of different things in their home. And so you can go and actually really get to know certain families. Of all the variables or pictures that you can look at, there's families, homes, but lots of other topics here. So jackets, jewelry, pets, for instance. There's everybody's pets. And then you can kind of factor it or filter it by different parts of the world and by income. So you could make your range of income really high or really low, and then you get to compare these pictures. So why we thought this was interesting, and I won't show you this video here, but it's an excellent TED Talk by Anna Rosling. So she's the creator of DollarStreet, and it's part of their Gapminder website. And she gives a really good video on how to use photos as data. And we actually assign students to watch this video as part of the assignment that we'll talk about. And what I like that she brings up is she has a quote here from this video that says, "You would never accept someone talking about stereotypes of your own country, grouping it all into one country, but we do that all the time when it comes to other countries." So the motivation and kind of excitement of using this new tool is thinking about the comparison between statistics and actual individual observations. So statistics, often we look at summary measures. So the Gapminder data itself is a measure per country, but that misses diversity within each single country. And she points out that in reality, the gap between the poor and the rich within a country is actually much larger than the gap between 2 different countries at the same income level. And argues that we really don't understand living conditions and socioeconomic aspects of a country until we actually get to see it. So to introduce the DollarStreet assignment, these are the learning outcomes that we're hoping this assignment reaches. It's done in week 2 of the semester, so we're still talking about observational units and types of variables. And then we want students to be able to create appropriate types of plots for 1, 2, or multiple variables based on their types, gaining information from a plot and summarizing it, and then reflecting on how pictures could give one insight into a data set. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jade.
Thanks, Stacey. So like Stacey mentioned, we use this in week 2 as an out-of-class assignment. It is collaborative work, especially the use of Tableau, because not all students are able to use Tableau. Tableau actually doesn't work on Chromebooks either. It doesn't download well for them. So we do allow students to work collaboratively, but request that they submit individual assignments. But we could absolutely see this used in classroom as an in-class activity where we would see, I'll show you questions 1 through 4 that are based on the video that Stacey had shown earlier. And so we could see that used as kind of preparation for class and then working through these in-class questions to explore the DollarStreet as well as the Gapminder data. Some key things that we like to talk about with this assignment are distinguishing between observational units. So in the DollarStreet, the observational units are actually households or families versus the Gapminder data, the observational units are countries. So that gives a bit of a distinction and something good for the students to think about. That idea of multivariable thinking, again, reflecting back to the GAZE guidelines. In interactions we see between 4 different variables we want students to start thinking about. So we address that in question 13. And then the comparison across countries versus across income brackets is addressed in question 14, where we give students some flexibility in the ability to look at a topic of their choosing. So to see the start of this activity, or this DollarStreet assignment is available for download. We'll have this link at the end of our slides as well. But the DollarStreet activity starts with 1 through 4 being a review or a viewing of that Anna Rosling video, talking about observational units, talking about how many categories, which in essence are variables here, that the photographers are capturing. And then this question 4 at the bottom being the important question that we want students non-statistically to think about, the fact that there are more differences or greater differences within a country than there are within income brackets between different countries. We ask them a few more questions, but then we pull in DollarStreet about halfway through the activity some more. So we ask the students to compare a segmented bar graph, which is looking at the distribution of religion across different regions of the world. And then we use DollarStreet by looking at worship places. So worship places are one of the topics that was photographed for all the families on DollarStreet. And so we asked the students to pick worship places from different regions and compare and contrast those for families that live in a similar place, meaning have a similar income level on DollarStreet. We refer back to that multivariable thinking in question 13, where we asked them actually to create that plot that Stacey showed you earlier in Tableau, where we're comparing income per person as a predictor of life expectancy and comparing that relationship between 2 different years in the Gapminder data, 1950 and 2014. So really what we're looking for here is, again, looking at or being able to display more than 2 variables at a time, and then really in question C, talking about the impact and how these variables are all related. And then we wrap up this activity, or we did this semester, by asking the students to pick a topic and then compare different countries with similar income levels, or families from different countries with similar income levels, and then also compare families from the same country that have different income levels. Again, reinforcing that idea that Anna Rosling mentioned in her video regarding the differences within a country versus differences within income levels. So some examples that we wanted to share with you. Again, we have roughly 700 students per semester taking this class. So yes, we did pick the good examples here. We had some less great understanding of or comparison of these places of worship, but we wanted to share some students' responses that we felt were particularly insightful. So a lot of students noted that outside of the US, most places of worship were in the home, were a dedicated space within homes where they had a very similar setup, where you had a rug and some type of ceremonial piece or object that these individuals or families would worship at. So we see a lot of similarities here for similar income levels, not too fancy or extravagant, rich in design, but not over the top. And so we had some nice comparisons here of the places of worship. In terms of looking at this multivariable thinking, we had some different ideas, but all students responded with that same aspect, that we'd be comparing the slope of the line to compare how income is impacting life expectancy for our 2 years. So we see the slope of the line is less extreme. That is, lower income populations today have higher life expectancy, but the higher income populations converge to nearly the same life expectancy. Another way of indicating that would be this second student response, that as life expectancy increases, income per person increases at a less dramatic rate for those in 2014 than those in 1950. So here again, we're seeing students have this idea of relationships between income and life expectancy, but how that relationship varies depending on years. Even though multiple linear regression is not something we're able to get to in our Stat 216 class, we love that we're able to have students think about that, which preps them for a future Stat 216 class. And then the last one, which we found really interesting, were the topics of their choice. So we'll start by one student chose meat as their topic. And here you're looking at 3 pictures of families at similar income levels, but in different countries. So you can see Indonesia, China, and the Philippines were all selected. And when they took a picture of meat, those meat were live animals. And the student felt that, noting that he looked at all low income levels, that this income level maybe has no way to preserve food, and that's why their meats are all still alive and all the same animal, in fact, all are pigs. Versus when that student looked at the same country and different income levels, he noticed that while at the low income level, the meat is a live animal, as we moved up in income level, the level of food preparation increases. So we see here 3 different families from China, and we're seeing a live animal at the low income level, and then moving up to more and more prepared and a nicer presentation as we move up in income levels within China. We saw a similar comparison of bathroom doors. So the topics selected here were bathroom doors. The student noted that all the bathroom doors were similar. They offered limited privacy. They were mostly a tarp. There was no lock, versus when they were comparing for different income levels within one country, we see a much greater gap between the doors. So again, we're seeing very little privacy and no lock at a low income level to a full door with a lock that includes more privacy that's indoors instead of outside of the home at those higher income levels. And noting again that it's a nicer quality door as we move from the middle income level to the highest income level chosen within that country. Another student selected toys here, and so they noticed that the toys were pretty similar. The biggest difference was the wear of the toy, and so we're again seeing all smaller objects, one single toy per home within similar income levels, but across different countries. When the same student looked at the same country but different income levels, we have a broken TV used as a toy versus we have 2 brand new toys, or seemingly looking brand new toys, used at that higher income level. Teeth was another topic selected here, and so we saw all similar teeth when we were looking at a similar income level across different countries. When we went to the same country across different income levels, the student noted that we vary from a little bit less dental care to a bright white smile between different families in India at different income levels. And the last one that we wanted to share with you, we thought was a little bit humorous. So the student was comparing balls across different families in different countries that were at similar income levels. They noticed that they are all different balls, but they're all full of air, ready to play, and that any one of these kids kicking the ball could be the next Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. Given the right equipment and opportunity, they could shine. So a really bright outlook for these individual families. So in terms of what we've learned from this activity, we did have a really positive feedback from students. They found this really interesting, being able to view all these different aspects of families from all across the world and being able to narrow and filter that by income level to compare students of similar or families of similar incomes and compare families within the same country. Some things that were not quite clear enough or that we would revise the next time we do this. We talked about Dollar Street neighbors or living in a similar place on Dollar Street. That wasn't always clear to students that what we meant by that were families with similar income. So we would clarify that idea of a Dollar Street neighbor. We would also clarify that in that last question where we asked them to compare families of different income levels within the same country, we had a fair portion of students choose the US and compare different income levels in the US. We'd like to broaden their horizons a little bit by requiring them to choose a country outside of the United States. If you are in or at an institution that might not want to talk about alcohol in an assignment, in an educational assignment, that could be something that you would ban. So alcoholic beverages specifically was a topic that was photographed. And we did have a not high percentage, but a portion of students select alcoholic beverages. And I learned more than I needed to about what beverages are more likely to be used with cocktails versus what is more likely to be served straight up. So that might be something to think about. We'd also like to add a reflection question, just talking about advantages and disadvantages of using categorical and quantitative variables and being able to summarize that data versus using this picture data. The last thing that I talked about with my class in response to this, and this was again on the heels of hearing that positive feedback from students, we talked about some ways that this using pictures as data are used in the real world. So for example, all the innovations that are going on with self-driving cars, with parking assistance, with there's a whole host of new technology that's being used that are using data as images in the automotive industry. So students found that interesting as well. And that would be the end of our presentation. So again, thank you guys for being here and for listening. We hope you found it interesting. Again, the DollarStreet activity is available for download at this link. And then we'd like to open it up for questions.
Hi, thank you very much. That was really interesting. It was great to see some of the examples that the students gave, and that was very, very, very interesting. So we do have some questions. So the first one would be, would students be ready at the beginning of the semester to process multivariable thinking in an introductory statistics course? I only give students examples of multivariable data at the end. Could you talk more about that feedback?
Sure, yeah. They really enjoy looking at data sets with more than 2 variables. I think they find them more realistic. And as long as we're just doing descriptive things, like no inference, but just looking for patterns in the data, they seem very receptive to it at the beginning of the semester.
I would agree with that as well. So like those examples of discussing slope as a measure of comparing relationships between the 2 years, that's not something we had discussed in class really. That's something that students had to kind of come up on their own or in their groups. And we saw some really great feedback on that from students.
So we have a question going back to the pig example, the food variable. Do students ask about interaction between religion and the food variables? For example, in Muslim or in Jewish countries, they would not have pigs for food. Did anybody come up with something like that?
I didn't see that specifically in my class, but I did see students when they were talking about places of worship discuss how the religion that seemed apparent based on the different pieces, components of their places of worship. So students definitely did compare places of worship across like what type of religion they would expect in that country. But I didn't see that for the animals.
For the animals, okay. Another comment here, I love this activity. How did students do with the observational units question? And overall, which question was the hardest for them?
The observational units were tricky, which was why we kind of like this activity. Because they do get a little bit confused on whether they're measuring variables on a family or on the country. So we try to scaffold that in the activity, but that is one thing that we did see them struggle with. As for the most difficult ones, I don't know, Jade, what would you think?
I was trying to think about that. Segmented bar graphs are often difficult for students to create. They forget to change the y-axis to plotting conditional proportions instead of plotting counts, or they change it to proportions but do it a proportion out of total instead of a conditional proportion. So that was a pretty common error, which then led into like that next question 9, where they were looking at what region had, I think, Muslim as its majority. So that's something that I noticed. And that's something that's pretty consistent, I would say, whether they're doing this in Tableau or we're asking them to kind of draw it on their own.
Yeah, we have done an activity similar to this, but without DollarStreet. So we used to just use the Gapminder data, and we would have them create this scatter plot that I showed. And they do have difficulty with that. So that's why we give a couple hints to kind of guide them as to what they're creating in that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an estimate of about how long it takes the students to do the activity? So if they were, you know, for example, if you could do it in class or a lab?
We assign it as homework and they have a week to do it. I think it could definitely be done, as Jade mentioned, as an activity in class, if you have them do some of the things ahead of time. So maybe watch the video and some of those beginning questions about observational units, and then doing explorations within Tableau or another data visualization software within the class period. I don't know if I have a good estimate of how much time it would take them outside of class.
I think students tend to report it takes like 4 hours or so, but a lot of that is, this is the beginning of the semester. This is the first time they're working with Tableau. So a lot of it is what they term fighting with Tableau in terms of creating the data visualization. So if you were working through this in an in-class activity where you could give feedback more consistently, or work through some of the Tableau questions together, I think that would really cut down the time it would take for students to work through this.
Yeah, I would definitely, it would probably be too long for a 50-minute class period, but a 75-minute class period, I think it could work.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of using Tableau in the introductory course, this is probably an impossible question to do live, but could someone contact you about introducing it, Tableau, in an introductory statistics course? Would you be willing to talk to them about it?
Yeah. I actually have a paper from eCOTS a couple of years ago that talks about our experiences with Tableau, but feel free to email me or Jade and we can point you to some resources with that. I will say the one thing that is frustrating about Tableau is that what Jade mentioned, that it doesn't run on Chromebooks. And for some reason, our IT people have just never been able to get it on our computer labs. So we've tried like a couple years and I don't know why.
Interesting enough, the athletic department has been able to work it on their computer labs, but general campus unavailable for us. So yeah, we will continue to work on that.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah. We have a couple laptops in our math learning center that they can check out with it on there.
Right.
All right, so we'll finish up with one last question here. So in this era now where everything is online, have you tried this activity online yet? In an online class?
We will in the fall.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that will go. We'll let you know when the fall comes.
Great. Well, thank you both very much. This was a very exciting activity. I love the multivariable thinking and thinking about data in a different way by using the picture. So thank you both very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.